for their own good. Your health is your responsibility as well as the government's responsibility. So we are all going to vaccinate. I would say that this is a voluntary compulsory or volu-compo.
The sad truth is, even though the pharma industry and the universities want to have equity and diversity when it comes to ethnicity, we as blacks and ethnic minorities do not volunteer. The truth of the matter is, in the whole vaccine trials, black and ethnic minorities were 9.3%.
First, we have to begin from the chill, the deep chill that the 11 years of Flight Lieutenant J.J. Rawlings and PNDC had brought upon free speech and free media, free association, and the likes. We have to remember that.
We are not educating the citizens on our citizenship rights and obligations. We need to be educated on these. Thank you.
It is the power of Parliament to investigate and seek to punish public officers who betray the public trust. There must be dire consequences for the betrayal of the public trust, particularly when people want to amass wealth to the disadvantage of society and to the disadvantage of the Ghanaian public.
In terms of leveraging, my number one concern is strengthening Parliament as an institution by providing them the resources that they need. If we provide them the resources that they need, we have an opportunity to be able to judge them at the end of the 4 years, because it's not only the executive who come looking for votes.
Edrum reviews now to say, your church sika ama bang sika no amosi yan so dada afi ubehwe no yesi yedi sika ni bia koye ade sei yenkohwem no keta sehye ne proye wo mu bre ni nyina no e ma yenkofo ya se mu betua eka
se yepede ye encourage Ghana fo the Ghana fo betua taxes a if you no kwa no ekrope o de ye encourage aban na aban ne ekwana ofado uba konta wo mesne use taxes ho no obetum wa be sanya dem a on Ghana fo nkran no wontua taxes.
We make amendments when it comes to less education. That is why even constitutional violations like you didn't
and staff of CDD-Ghana, I would like to welcome you and also thank you for honoring our invitation to be part of this afternoon's discussion on non-custodial sentencing in Ghana's criminal justice system. Since the early 2000s, CDD-Ghana has actively engaged in promoting non-custodial sentencing in the country. Over the years, the center has organized a series of stakeholder engagements with both state and non-state actors within the sector to push for alternative sentencing in Ghana's criminal justice system. Communiques, briefing papers, and concept papers have also been written on this matter with the aim of influencing policy. Ladies and gentlemen, recent happenings and developments within the country in recent times have brought the issue of non-custodial sentencing to the fore. The question is, how soon can citizens expect to have this sentencing policy and law? Particularly, the COVID-19 pandemic exposed the inadequacies in the criminal justice system, particularly made a strong case for non-custodial sentencing in Ghana. It brought to the fore the need to decongest our prisons to enable inmates to observe the necessary preventive protocols the virus had imposed on the human race. As a think tank, CDD-Ghana is dedicated to promoting democracy, good governance, and inclusive development, including promoting the rights of marginalized groups Accordingly, we are organizing this roundtable discussion to bring key actors on the table to interrogate how the state and all other complementary bodies can collaborate to expedite action for the passage of a comprehensive non-custodial sentencing law that will ensure our legal system gravitate towards reform and rehabilitation of offenders, as well as decongest our prisons, which affects the health of inmates. The Center's roundtable discussions offer a platform that provides an avenue and a space for well-informed reflections and conversations on various topics of national interest. This year alone, our roundtable discussions have addressed key issues. Permit me to name a few of them. We've addressed citizens' concern around the COVID-19 vaccine, the late President Rawlings' contributions to democratic development in the Fourth Republic, how the 8th Parliament of the Fourth Republic can leverage on its composition for reforms. This was held in Tamale. We've also had conversations around taxation and accountability in Ghana. And the last one was on the impact of presidential election petitions on Africa's democracy. Ladies and gentlemen, today's discussion is the 6th, as already mentioned by my colleague Mami, is the 6th edition for this year. And it is our hope that questions which have plagued the minds of many on the matter of non-custodial sentencing will be answered. I would like to commend all stakeholders, particularly Post Foundation and other distinguished panelists for their commitment, which has contributed to the significant progress made towards making alternative sentencing a reality in Ghana. On this note, and on behalf of CDD-Ghana, I wish you all a fruitful deliberation, and thank you once again.
Thank you very much, Paul. We'll go straight into the discussion, and I'd like to introduce our moderator for today. She is Wendy Laye, and she is a journalist with Media General. Her focus areas are human interest stories and social issues. So, Wendy, I'll hand over to you to introduce our panel, and then we'll go straight into the discussion.
Thank you very much, Efwa. Good afternoon, everybody. Once again, my name is Wendy Lai, and I'm a journalist with Media General. So this afternoon, I will be joined by ASP Stephen Okaya Abuaji. He's with the Legal Units Ghana Prison Service. ASP, would you please join me here? A round of applause, please. You can still have your water. You need it, so. Okay, and then we have Jonathan Oseo, who's Executive Director, POS Foundation, and Facilitator of the Justice for All program. A round of applause. Jonathan, I think you're also doing a yeoman's job. Well done. Welcome. Glad to have you here. And then we do have some other persons who will also join us shortly, as and when we continue with our conversation. We have contributors as well. Very soon we'll have Mrs. Ameli Dankwa-German, Office of the Attorney General, joining us. And we have a contributor who has a very critical role to play as part of our conversation today. And she is Gifty Kwe, Assistant Director, Ministry of Interior. Glad to have you. Would you please wave so we can all see you here? And then we also have Superintendent Elon Bani. He is from the Legal and Prosecution Department of the Ghana Police Service. Good afternoon, sir, and thanks for your time. Okay, so we'll just kick the ball running shortly, but before we do that, there is a church that is playing a very important role when it comes to justice as well. And I do have Apostle Lawrence Otunyako, Finance and Administration Director, Church of Pentecost, Ghana. Apostle, please join us. A round of applause, please. Today, we're focusing on non-custodial sentencing, but I would want to start on a premise here. A conversation I found online, and I probably would want us to use that as an icebreaker and start our conversation. It reads that custody and community are often seen as polar opposites in the justice lexicon. Custody is tough, community is soft, prison is probably punitive, and probation is a let-off. Now, for CDD, they believe that we can find ways and means to expedite action for the passage of a comprehensive non-custodial sentencing law to ensure Ghana's legal system works towards reform and rehabilitation of offenders. And what I find quite interesting, at the back we're having some conversations about rehabilitation, reforms of our systems and all that. Now, let me start with you, Jonathan, because I know you've done a lot of work when it comes to our justice system. But, and I will throw the question to ASP as well. When it comes to non-custodial sentencing, why should we even have a meeting here? I know CDD has started conversations about this years ago. It's still ongoing, and today we're here. Why should we take this seriously? If someone has done wrong, I mean, whether it was something as huge as you can think or as small as you can, I'm breaking this down so that even for our viewers who are watching us virtually, who have no idea of what it is, they will be able to understand. Sometimes the technicalities are too much. So let's try and break it down for everybody to understand. I do something wrong, and even one of the issues that came up recently had to do with the Krapim Polo, taking a photo of herself and her son, a nude photo, sharing it online. People thought that the justice system was too strong. We could have done something about it. She could have given probation, or the sentencing could have been lowered, or something could have been done about it. But why should we make a big deal about non-custodial sentencing?
Thank you very much. In terms of our criminal jurisprudence, we thought it wise to have laws to govern a democratic dispensation like Ghana. When you talk about crime, there are grades and categories of crime. Because when you pick a gun to go and rob or to kill, that crime cannot be the same as somebody going to insult somebody or assault someone in a different way. Because there are categories of crime, from the misdemeanor to the second degree to the first degree felonies, there are punishments that accompanies every action or every offense in that respect, in that aspect. So when you look at some crimes, as we are talking about non-custodial now, we're saying that some of the offenses are big, others are small. So if you have somebody being charged with a first degree felony and convicted for that matter, that person can be given a very huge sentence. But when you have somebody who, out of hunger or out of some mistakes, or even if it is deliberate, but has stolen a mobile phone of less than 100 Ghana cedi, why will you want to sentence somebody to that to life to that effect? So there is the need to give some level of punishment and consider some who are not supposed to go to prison. And that is where non-custodial sentence come in. So if viewers are watching, when we talk about non-custodial, in simple terms, we are saying that if an offender is to be punished, do not send the person to prison, that is to custody. But let's find alternatives to punish such person for the sake of reformation, rehabilitation, and reintegration into society. Now the importance. When you sentence somebody who had committed a misdemeanor to prison, he gets in there, he meets up with hardened criminals. And when those hardened criminals meet up with them, they get hardened. Obviously, he went in with a misdemeanor and will come out of prison. So if he went in with a small roll of weed, this time he will come out and go back in with a gun, and life would have been lost. So the issue of recidivism, that is reoffending, is critical when you are considering non-custodial sentence in every dispensation, so that the reoffending rate will come down, where people will not even go to prison to get hardened and come back and then cause more harm to the system. Again, when you look at government is spending a lot on prisons. And so if we are going to get them to weed, to clean, the state will benefit. Why do we have to put them in custody, take care of their water, electricity, accommodation, where the place is already congested? Because the prison officer would, I'm sure, will tell you that in some authorized capacity is somewhere around 850. Currently, it's holding more than 3,300. So what are we doing to such people? They come out not reformed, hardened to cause a lot. That is why we are saying that if you commit a crime that is not big, huge, or it's not within the first degree felonies and even part of the second degree felonies and misdemeanor, it will be appropriate as a state for us to consider giving you a non-custodial sentence than this. But as we go on with our conversation, we will break it down to look at the component of what non-custodial sentencing is about and what has been done currently.
So before I come to ASP, I would want to go to Apostle. But Jonathan, you're making it seem as if you're making it seem like it's food, and possibly it transcends and gets into something bigger than we all expect. Sometimes you hear stories and this person did this and has been sentenced to these number of years in prison. And so, oh, just that, you know, and you expect more from that. But I'll come back to you again, because this conversation, someone would say it's a crime, it's wrong, so you have to be dealt with. But again, you mentioned reformation, rehabilitation, and touch on some other important things. Also, when it comes to religion, in there, I remember there was a conversation about people having been sentenced. Jonathan mentioned it, that somebody does something as little as you can think, but becomes hardened and worse off because they were sent to prison. Why do you think this is an issue? Why should we prioritize non-custodial sentencing in our country?
Thank you very much for the opportunity. Once we live in a society, we have different people with different backgrounds. And the society has to be managed and governed by laws so that we all live in harmony and in peace. However, there are some people who would by all means go overboard to do things which in the sight of the law are not proper, for which reason they need to face the law and be punished in a way. Every offense is an offense. However, when you look at the magnitude of the offense, some are weightier than others. We can say that somebody stole nkontomire from a farm. You come before a court and you are given a sentence of about 3 months imprisonment. And you think of the value of the nkontomire and the offense that the person committed meriting this much punishment. When the person is imprisoned, there are dynamics in there. One, the government takes care of the cost. Secondly, the person himself is also going to mingle with other people. And as my brother said, they meet with people who are more, they've gone deeper into crime than himself. So as they interact, they are given more tricks and they are influenced in a negative way. And when they come out, they are more hardened and they do more serious things than they did, which repeatedly send them back to prison. So what do? We have a challenge. The other challenge on hand is that the prisons are overcrowded. We had a capacity of about 10,000 nationwide, and now we are recording prisoners of about 14,000, meaning 4,000 in excess of the capacity that the prisons can hold. So what happens? Managing them becomes a challenge. It's supposed to be a reformatory environment where people who are sent in there will come out reformed. But that's not the result that we receive. So what can we do to decongest the prisons. We therefore need to weigh the offenses. Even the law itself has given categories. We have first degree, second degree felony, and we have the misdemeanor. And some of these tiny things, insulting somebody and meriting a prison term and all that, there are alternatives that can equally take care of the punishment that we want to mete out onto the convict. So for someone who has committed some minor offense, a punishment could be meted out, which would also be an advantage to the community or the society. For instance, cleaning of the streets, cleaning of the gutters as well, going into community service by weeding the grasses and the compounds. We can even give them the responsibility of planting trees from one point to the other over a period. And if we have structures in place that will support that, it will be punitive enough for the person. He will be working from home and reporting to the police station after each day's service. So the term that has been given to him or her is elapsed. Then we would have use of the person. The person will be ashamed because he's working in public in a way that he or she would normally not do. And the person himself will escape the challenges of going to prison. We cited the case of this lady who was imprisoned, a young lady who has a child that has to be taken care of. And you see the prison term that was given. An alternative sentence could have been given to her to merit the same weight, however, will not be in prison, and that will help us with the decongestion, and it will help us with the budget of the nation, and it will also help us with the reformation of the inmates who merit custodial sentence. So all these things put together, I see a lot of value in non-custodial sentencing. And one thing that I will use as a comparison is that we have alternative way of handling issues, the ADR, alternative dispute resolution. We have the normal court system, which was also congested. But when the ADR came in, it has also decongested the courts to an extent and has facilitated the discharge of, will I say, offenses very quickly. So if we also look at the non-custodial sentence in our laws, it will also help us to decongest, benefit from the people who have offended, and also reduce our budgetary allocations from government to them. Thank you.
But one might ask that you're from the Church of Pentecost. And
yes.
Quite recently, we saw the Church of Pentecost building a new prison, and it looked very plush and beautiful.
Yeah.
And here you are sitting here talking about non-custodial sentencing. So why should your church build a new prison? What message are you sending across? Because for someone who is watching or listening to us, this is conflicting. You're doing one thing and you're saying one thing and you're doing another. So just briefly, give us some clarity as to why the church pursued that. Because you mentioned some options that are easily available.
Yeah, thank you very much. And we are not conflicting ourselves. We are rather complementing the efforts that we are putting in. As a church, we have a vision codenamed Vision 2023. And that has the objective or overarching aim of possessing the nations. So as part of it, we have social interventions. So if there are needs in the society which needs to be met, we come in and bring
an intervention which will also be an example to people. When God wanted to save man, he sent Jesus Christ to come and live with us, and he modeled life to us, and we are following after him. So we go into the situation, we assess it. We look at human beings who are in prison. And when you've been able to watch the video that goes around on how congested our prisons are, as a minister of the gospel, you cannot be comfortable if you see human beings living under these conditions. It is very terrible, and no one would wish to be in that condition. And it has also affected their behavior in prison, and it affects them to the extent that when they come out, they are more hardened, because the situation, you cannot sleep. Some people sit through the night. Some people just have their heads here. Other people to have their heads the other way. So as a church, we wanted to model something for government to also replicate. And the way that we can decongest the prison was to allow more space. Not just giving more space to them. The facility that we had at Ajura can accommodate 300 prisoners. And the facilities that we have on board is reformational. It has the concept of reforming people, so that once you go into that prison, you come out reformed to fit into society. We have workshops over there that do tailoring, that's dressmaking. We have a workshop for woodwork, and we also have a workshop for metal works, and we have a workshop for welding. So you are made to undergo any of such training. So by the time you come out, you have some skills, and you can contribute to society, instead of coming out to go and rob again and get yourself back to prison. So in a way, we are bringing meaning to livelihood. Once someone is a prisoner, it doesn't mean that he or she is written off. Within the prison, we have a chapel. We also teach the word of God, pray with them, give them hope to life. And also, not only that, we have a football facility there where they can also exercise and feel that they are human beings. So when they come out, they easily fit into society. We cannot decongest every prison with a facility as that. But I want to place on record that by the grace of God, we still have 3 projects that are ongoing. One prison at Damango, another one, the expansion of the Nsaum prison, and a third one at Obuasi. And all these things are spearheaded by the church. But it will interest you to note that since we started with these projects, individuals have come in to support us to finance these projects. It means that others also have that mind, but the way to do it was a challenge. And we want to use it as a demonstration to government to sound it to him or to them to know that this is a problem that we have on hand. And if a church is assisting in this way, we also, as a government, should be able to assist to help decongest. And one of the alternatives that we have is the non-custodial sentence to decongest our prisons. So it is complementary and not contradictory.
I believe that
Thank you.
As your church and others have come to support, we all will rally around this and ensure that it becomes a reality for our justice system.
Thank you.
ASP, you're the center of it all. And I would want to know your personal experience. How does this all feel? And I want to pick your thoughts. Do we really need this? These gentlemen are sitting far from, the center, but you're amidst the fire. We've spoken about congestion in prisons, rehabilitation, reformation, they're coming out being hardened, and all that. And even the psychological effects even has on you as officers. because sometimes you get overwhelmed by these challenges. Do we really need this? And tell me why you think we need this.
Thank you very much, Wendy. Good evening, audience, and to our cherished viewers. Non-custodial sentence is a must at the moment. The Ghana Prison Service, our mandate is to ensure the safe custody, welfare, rehabilitation, and reformation of the prisoners. One of the major challenges that we are having is overcrowding. And the ripple effect of overcrowding is just too much. At the moment, we have a total prison population of 13,192. Out of this number, we have a total convict population of 11,638. That represents 88.22%. We have a total remand population of 1,554, representing 11.78%. The authorized prison population, or let me see, the authorized space available is 9,945. So you will see that we have a total population of 13,192. So we have a variance or overcrowding of 3,247 inmates, which is a very serious matter. The reason why we need non-custodial sentencing is that when these inmates come to prison and they are admitted, we do what we call criminal risk assessment. We assess the risk posed by each inmate and then know where to place the person in terms of which cell. That is the ideal thing to do. So for instance, if a person commits robbery, you cannot mix that person with somebody who has committed assault. But because of lack of space, we tend to put them together. Because when the police bring them, we cannot say that we don't have space to take them back. So that's our major challenge. And because we mix them, there is contamination. Contamination in the sense that somebody who comes in with, let's say, assault, he's in the same cell with somebody who has committed robbery. He will learn a lot of things, a lot of tactics, tricks, when it comes to robbery. One day I went to Akuse prison and one prisoner had an interaction with me. He said, "Master, I came here last night and the whole night I couldn't sleep." And I asked him why. He said, the kind of conversations that the prisoners were having, he was overwhelmed. Some of them were planning how they are going to, when they come out, how they are going to commit robbery, how they are going to attack the person who, the informant who gave the information to the police to arrest them. Some of them have even targeted police officers. We get a lot of intelligence, the kind of things that they discuss, especially in the night. Especially in the night, they even plan escapes. So this prisoner who went there with assault, in the night he was hearing all these things. How they are going to commit the robbery and all that, how they were going to block the CCTV camera at cantonment, and look, it was so interesting. You see, so it's a major problem. So these hardened criminals pollute the less hardened criminals. And so some of them go out. When they go out, because society is stigmatizing them, they don't get work to do, they are not properly reintegrated. Their own families shun them, they come back and they become more hardened criminals. You see, so one major problem when it comes to overcrowding is the issue of contamination, which doesn't allow us to do our work in terms of doing proper criminal risk analysis. Another issue is that currently, the service is spending about 90% of its budget on inmates feeding. The government spends 1 cedi 80 pesos per inmate for feeding the whole day. So we have to perform magic, feed them breakfast, lunch, and supper. So if there is non-custodial sentencing, the numbers will reduce, and we wouldn't have to spend a lot of our money on feeding them. And it will also help governments in terms of their budgetary allocation. Because I feel currently the government is spending so much, even though we are saying it's not enough. They are spending so much when it comes to the feeding of the inmates. Another issue is rehabilitation. We are not able to properly rehabilitate them. Most of the prisons don't have the facilities to train them to get or to acquire certain skills that will enable them to become useful citizens when they come out of the prisons. A lot of the prisons are not. So basically they go to the prison, they just eat and sleep, wake up. That is it. So if the numbers go down, we can have proper
in it. We have the fine, we have probations, we have bond systems, we even have suspensions. We have pregnant, once there's a pregnant woman and then the pregnant woman is going to, probably there's a sentence, there's an option to suspend the sentence and then goes to deliver and do something and come. We have a number of non-custodial sentences in there, which is being implemented. Okay, which is being implemented. Because the bond system is there, we have probation, and probation is under the Social Welfare Department. We have probation officers that are implementing that. And we have juvenile systems. Once you have a kid or a child that has committed an offense, we'll hardly see them in prisons. You know, there is also a non-custodian option. We don't straight away put them into prisons. We have a number of, how do you call it, non-custodian options. What I think we've all been discussing so far is community service. So let's get it straight. What we've been discussing so far is community service, which has not been aligned in the Criminal Offence Act, Act 30. It's not so much aligned. But then the problem is, what is government doing or what is the ministry doing about it? Why has it kept so long? This is something that we've been working on it since decades. Okay, it's not in the act. It's a new policy that is coming into play. And so when you are introducing such a system, you have to make sure that you dot all your T's and your I's. Don't forget that a community service is probably an offender who is being given a work to do in a community within a number of, probably within a specific period, a number of hours. So it means you commit a crime and then you do service in the community for the benefit of the community as well as yourself, so that you could rehabilitate back into the community early. But then let's not also forget that before you pass such a bill, you have to look at the dynamism, the community or the country that we find ourselves. We're saying it's being implemented in other countries. Yes, it's true. You go to Britain, you go to US, African countries, West African countries, some of them are implementing. But then we'll have to learn best practices and then see how we can, how do you call it? How we can domesticate it into our settings. Don't forget that we have an attitude. I'm not bringing anything up, but you know we have an attitude of lynching criminals. So imagine we haven't had enough awareness creation on it. You pass the bill, you started implementing. Then an offender commits, probably goes to still, sometimes we think it's a small offense. You go to probably a community that do farming, and then it is assumed that when you go to the villages or the communities that they do farming, if you want to go and eat something, you don't have money, you plug it there, you eat in the farm. Once you take it out, it is assumed it is stealing. we might see it as probably a plantain not being an offense, but that's their livelihood. So if you are looking at the value of it, it's also, for them, it's not a big offense. So imagine a person going to steal that in that particular community, and then you've not educated them enough about the community service, what it's about. Then they see probably the offender sweeping. And this is a country that we are known to do lynching. What will happen? Okay. So it's not that we are not pushing. We've been doing this since decades. We've learned best practices. We've done a number of researches into it. Initially, we even were looking at the kind of offenses that will qualify somebody. And you just don't do that within a day or two or probably some few months. We looked at the offenses. Now we are at a level that we have to redefine the kind of offenses because we have cyber crimes now. And it's a new act that has been built. So we have to categorize all of, initially we were just listing the offenses. But now it looks like we have to categorize the offenses and define which offense will qualify somebody to perform a community service. So we have been working. Currently, we had the first one. I think Pulse Foundation assisted the ministry. We had a bill. We sent it to AG's office. And then they made their comments on it. And then it came back. When it came back, we had a stakeholders meeting. And one thing that came up is we have a number of, as I said, non-custodial sentencing options in the country. And so the community service in other jurisdictions, there's a community service commission. There's always a body that, how do you call it, regulates its operations. And so before we will do that, we have to ensure that we don't, we look at what is being implemented around and then see how we can marry them. Because we have probation officers, we have bond system. How do we put this ones together so that one complements each other? So the government is working on it and we are committed in implementing it.
See, we know government is working, but can I speak Chi? D for Dabe. There are lives in there. People's lives are being wrecked because they get in there. We're trying to make it as plain as possible because some people think it's too technical. Some probably don't even understand what we're talking about. But like our gentlemen here have said, someone commits a minor offense, gets in there, meets gurus, in quotes. They come up with strategies, even mentioned how they intend to harm an officer when they come out. And you say there are options. Yes. But it looks like we're too slow. It's taking decades. It's taking years. When are we getting there? Because it's a major part of our justice system. We cannot do away with it. We can't ignore it. We can't forget about it and make it seem as if it's business as usual. Even though there are options in there, we have to look at this. But in its entirety, when can we say that we've finally done this? Also, we wouldn't be sitting here today. When are we going to see this become a reality? Should I give you some time to breathe? I should give you some time.
As you said in Chi, you that's what I'm saying, that in passing a law, or this is a criminal justice system, so the fact that it's necessary, we know it, trust me, the ministry is committed to it. And so we write, we get sponsorships, we are doing something. Currently, we are working on the bill.
Because let me hold you there. If you talk about education, we can always do education. We're still doing education. As we're doing this is education. Yes, but it seems, if you say education, he's doing some work. He's doing some work. They're all doing some work. But I don't remember the last time I heard about non-custodial sentencing on television till Ikapim Polo's issue came up, or till he's having a function, or till the prison service or the police service are collaborating and they're doing something about it. Is it that we go to bed and when there's an issue and something arises, or somebody is doing a donation, or there's a conversation about it, that is when we hear, even though you're doing something about it, it might be hidden. So we want to know, when exactly will this happen?
Okay, when exactly will it happen? We'll definitely see it.
It's not in the pipeline. I don't want you to tell me it's in the pipeline.
It is in the
No.
It's being worked on.
He says he will help you, but this pipeline, we have to cut it at some point.
It's being worked on. But if you say, we wouldn't be sitting here
Mm.
if we are not here.
Mm.
Right? We wouldn't be talking about that if we are not doing anything. It means
I'll come back to you. Okay. But he says he wants to help you. I'm sure we have something from POS as well. Jonathan will say something as well.
I think Gifty mentioned Post Foundation. We've been working in partnership with the ministry for some time now. And that is why we wanted to help so that it doesn't become like, as for civil society, we are always at the throat of government. That is not how it is. The beauty of what is happening is that you heard CDD read a statement. First, it was Raj 2000 that began the conversation. Quickly, CDD, that is not a governmental institution, stepped in, did a lot of research. So we kept on hearing non-custodial centers out of the work they did.
Jonathan, please let me hold you there. I'm told that Hyundai ash color has blocked someone. So if you're the owner of the car, please move out and then check it. Thank you.
So
Sorry,
you
Jonathan.
see, it was a build-up to where Post Foundation came in with the ministry to even produce a bill. If we are always going to wait on government, they are sometimes overwhelmed with some kind of work. So if we are criticizing, we need to also be partners in building the situation, which we quickly did as civil society, and then join hands with the Ministry of Interior, because according to them, it was a priority. To me, I may not praise them, but I will say that the level of collaboration was very high to be able to get it through. When the first launch on the non-custodial sentence was made by the then Chief Justice, within 8 months, we've been able to go through almost 8 regions to solicit for public input. Like she rightly said, you are coming up with an enactment. You should understand that this is the first time, and this particular law is unique. The only best practice in Africa that we can boast of is Zimbabwe. But the Zimbabwe system is not like that of Ghana. So we need to know that you can sentence somebody to go to do community service. He goes out there and he goes to steal somebody's mobile phone again. So you need to go through the nitty-gritties of the law. That is why this was not a straightforward law, but you needed to go for original public consultation, which was done. At the end of the day, POS, Ministry of Interior, Attorney General, and the Office of the Chief Justice handed over the bill to the government, which is Cabinet, the Ministry of Interior, and they pushed it to Cabinet, I think, Madam, before elections. The only reason why it couldn't go through was elections. Now we are back again because we need to now submit a memo to them for them to go on. So in terms of explaining where we're coming from, right from CDD's research and research, to now that we can boast of having a bill to be able to now send to Cabinet is good. But as we are saying this, the same question goes. The ministry should exert some pressure on Cabinet to make sure that we get this, because now we can boast of a bill. It's long overdue. But when we're talking about non-custodial, let's set the parameters that when you're talking about non-custodial, you're talking about community service. You are talking about probation. We are talking about parole. Parole means you go into prison, but you still can come out and then serve your sentence out. Societies sometimes also have mandates. So when we entered into the non-custodial sentence regime with our partners, Ministry of Interior, we also touch base with the prisons. When you look at the Constitution at 208, it talks about the parole, which gives the direct mandate to Ghana Prisons Council. With the prior approval of the president, they can push the parole. We got a consultant with them, and then we fashioned out the regulation. Because there was a mention in the Constitution at 208, there was no need to come up with another law about it, but to set up a CI or regulation to get its operations done. This have been done in...
That will have a whole lot of... the accounts have an adage that, and I'm doing one coin. So we'll have so many options so that the judiciary will just implement it and then we can move forward. Yes, thank you very much.
Thank you very
Mrs. Amele Dankwajaman is with the Office of the Attorney General. I'm sure you've heard the concerns of ASB. Would you want to give a response? Well, we think you should give a response. I know you've said a number of things early on. Do I pass on the microphone?
As he rightly mentioned, there are suspended sentences. You see, essentially, I work with the prosecutions division. Our job is to prosecute people, and you do it based on the legislation. So the legislation gives you options when it comes to sentencing. If a person is, oh, sorry, is it better? If a person is convicted, he's sentenced based on what the law allows you to do. I have heard somebody say that, for instance, in Ikuapin Polo's case, the judge was limited in the sentence she could impose because it's a custodial sentence. I have had 2 cases. The first was a pregnant woman who assaulted a co-tenant. So she was living in a compound house, and she and another tenant fought. And so she was arraigned before the district court, and she was sentenced to, she was convicted of assault, and she was sentenced to, I think, 8 months imprisonment. Now, I didn't do the prosecution. It was a police prosecutor who did it. It only came to me because they discovered at the time of sentencing that she was expecting. And I think she was quite far advanced, about 6 months. It did not appear to be obvious at the start of the trial. So at that stage, her lawyer filed bail pending appeal. And when it came, I did not oppose it. We agreed under the suspended sentence. But the point is, she will still go back and serve the sentence after delivery. I don't think that is the aim. Yes, it's better to have been able to deliver outside, not in custody. But afterwards, she still goes back, and it was assault. And under the circumstances, I did not think that she ought to have been given a custodial sentence. But again, the hands of the judge was tied. The second case was somebody who was convicted of obscenity. She photoshopped images of, again, it was a rival. And she put the rival's face on obscene pictures and circulated it. And she admitted the offense, so she was again sentenced. But the options, again, were a fine or a custodial sentence. So the judge imposed a custodial sentence. Very often, my point is that despite what the lady from the Ministry of Interior says, the options are a fine or a custodial sentence. And if there are extenuating circumstances and the judge thinks it was grave enough, they impose a custodial sentence. I am aware, in theory, that all these sentences exist, but it's on a case-by-case basis. And in each case, at least for most of the offenses I prosecute, the sentences always have a custodial sentence. For traffic offenses, very often you find that people end up in prison for a traffic offense because the law says that they should be sentenced, or they should be fined, or both. And often the judges sentence them. So I think that the options with regard to sentencing are not sufficiently far-reaching such that you can give sentences other than custodial sentences.
The conversation is still ongoing, but there's a stakeholder here whom we haven't heard speak this evening, but also plays a very critical role, and that's Superintendent Elombani. Now, Superintendent, we all agree that it's a must, but how does the police service relate to the fact that there are always repeat offenders, and at least we've heard what others are doing. You're a major stakeholder here. What is your service also doing, and what are your concerns when it comes to this issue?
Yeah, so when we take steps to accost offenders and take them through the system, we expect that certain things should happen. Now, the problem is that when, because of issues of overcrowding, when they go to, or when they are given custodial sentences, we normally do not have the situation where they become reformed or rehabilitated, or probably we don't even get the situation where we feel that there has been some form of deterrence because people still keep on doing the same things over and over again. Now, we feel that, like Jonathan rightly said, we have the situation where people who may not necessarily be criminals get into the system and then become hardened because of their association with other very hardened criminals. Now, that doesn't help us as the Ghana Police Service, because if they become hardened and they come back, it means that our job becomes double, because the person who has been put through the system, who is supposed to be rehabilitated, comes back into the system much more hardened, and it becomes tougher for us. So for the police service, we have always been with the view that if the offense is such that the person was at the wrong place at the wrong time, the laws should work in such a way that such people may not necessarily be added to the stock, or as in the number we already have in the prisons. So that if we can actually have some form of punishment where they are not put in the system, where they don't go through the same old custodial system, then we can actually have some proper way of reforming them. Unfortunately, that is not so. We have tried as much as possible to also contribute our quota in terms of formulating policies. At least when Post Foundation came up with the idea through the Ministry of Interior, we supported. But unfortunately, the draft bill didn't see the day of light. I understand a lot of things have gone on and things have changed. But beyond that, the police service is always there to provide support and to see a lot of work being done, so that at least in the near future we would have this whole non-custodial sentencing becoming prominent in our criminal justice system. So like my colleague from the AG's department said, even though we have all these options in our Act 30 and the other laws, they are not given much prominence. I've not actually experienced a situation where somebody is actually given, that's me personally, given a non-custodial option. It's always either a sentence or a fine, and that is the reality on the ground. In very rare situations, you have some judges trying to exploit that options. So for us, we support this whole move to make non-custodial sentence very essential in our criminal justice system. So thank you very much.
Thank
We're grateful. Now, I know that we invited a number of stakeholders as well from Parliament. That's the Constitutional, Legal and Parliamentary Affairs Committee, Gender and Children Committee, Judicial Committee, Defense and Interior Committee, and then also SHRAJ, and then, but I'm told that we do have a representative from the Gender Ministry. Is he or she here? Hello, sir. I'm sure you've enjoyed our conversation so far, and you have some contributions to make. Is your turn? Yes. And I have two questions for you. So let's see a scenario where a mother is a breadwinner of her family. An example, or the best I can give now, is the Kwapimpolo situation. After all was said and done, there were a lot of questions on the minds of Ghanaians. Who is responsible for her son? In other cases, it's fathers who end up in prison, and they are the soul. They hold the family together. They are the breadwinners of this family. So, Ama Mansa ends up in prison, custodial sentencing, and she has kids. Let's say 5 or 6. What role does your ministry play in protecting Abba Mansa's children or her family or those she takes care of? And do you have that capacity to ensure any supervision at all? Thank you. Introduce.
As mentioned earlier, I'm from the Ministry of Gender. So with the issue of, let me approach it this way. Most of, concerning Kwapimpolo's incident, most of the comments were from media and all of that, and also some briefs of the outcome of the case that personally I have read. But then we have a social welfare department under the ministry. With the issue of capacity, the social welfare department also struggles with some capacity in terms of the homes for the children and all of that. So in such a case, the best place that a child should be in the protection of the government, which is the social welfare department. But I am not sure what the process is, whether the judge is supposed to recommend that the child be taken to that facility, because I overheard at a point in time the lawyer of Kwapimpolo saying that he still has custody of the child, he is taking care of it. I heard something like that on the media, but I'm not sure if I'm right, if I'm wrong. But normally, this is what's supposed to be done. But the other part of it, the rebuttal from the public opinion too, was that whether or not the government can properly take care of the child as the parent would have. That I wouldn't say yes or no, but per the circumstances, it wouldn't be equal. It is an offense you've committed. It is rather unfortunate that the child would have to be committed to a social welfare home for the social to be taken care of temporarily until you are released. So if probably the child attends maybe a prep school or something, the government would not pay for a prep school or something, but would provide that child with a basic education until you are being released or something. So it's all boils down to the same thing we are all talking about, which is the non-custodial sentencing or for lesser offenses. But my second issue is for us to be very careful what we classify as lesser offenses and all of that. Because one of the panelists, the gentleman, I've forgotten your name, mentioned that if someone steals a phone, and the motive behind criminality is very essential. So let's say someone steals a phone. We have to be very careful not to open the floodgates for an influx of criminality where the person is aware that if, as for this, when I take it, I can plead this, and then I'll be released, I'll pay this. I'm sure most of the times before the judges make their decisions, there are rules, there are procedures they look at. From sometimes the demeanors of the accused or something. You say, if I just find this person and this person goes back, there's a probability that the person, and also looking at the victim's situation and the kind of remedies the victim is also want, maybe through the prosecution, they take all these things into consideration too. So I think as the discussion is going on, we'll all have a fine line and come to an agreement with government and then make sure that we come up with procedures that will help all of us.
We really need that fine line. But Ephraim, I wasn't satisfied with your first answer. Am I the only one? Hello,
concerning
people. The custody of the child, family who takes care of the family when that breadwinner is sentenced or imprisoned. I think I heard Mrs. Ajiman whispering something. Did I hear you? At some point, I didn't hear you. Oh, Mrs. Ajiman. But should that be the case?
So there are regulations that social welfare, because in some other courts.
And this is our social welfare today. He's our social welfare because you are with the ministry. But you tried pushing it to another department, but you are representing the department. I'm sure you knew what you were in for when you agreed to step in here. So you should have our answers. You are shifting the blame to social welfare.
I'm not shifting a blame to social welfare is under the Ministry of Gender.
Of course.
And I'm saying that where I am unsure of is whether or not the judge is supposed to recommend through the procedure where the child should go to, like
Mrs. Ajiman.
Mrs. Ajiman is saying, most of the cases they are given to relatives of the accused or something. So I'm saying that I don't know whether it is within the merits of the judge to decide where the child goes to. It could be social welfare, and I don't think if the judge decides that social welfare to take the child in, the ministry is going to say no or something. Definitely the ministry is going to allow that. But where there are relatives also, which is another alternative, the judge can also explore that alternative as well. And I was also speaking of capacity with the social welfare facilities, which is also like overburdened.
Everywhere is overburdened.
Everywhere is overburdened. So that is also an issue. So I'm sure that is why the judges would rather let the children go to a relative than probably taking the child to a congested environment, probably.
So we're going to wrap up soon, but we've said a number of things. Why we want it, why it should happen, how it should happen. What's on my mind right now and what I'm thinking of, we touched on it briefly. Are we ready as a country? Should we, with all said and done, if this should happen? You talk about somebody engaging in community service and going to another person's house to steal a phone. Are we prepared? Education can't stop. Are we prepared psychologically, financially, everything that has to do with it as a country? I think that I will start with you, but I will go to Apostle first to pick your thoughts on it. You are doing a lot as a church. From your point, how do we prepare as a country? We're saying we're doing this, we're doing that, we're going here, we're doing that, we've come this far, we're doing this. But there's a but. Because if the systems, whatever we're wishing for happens, and the citizenry isn't educated enough or we're not ready for it, it possibly will come as a shock. And then we'll say that we'll release criminals into our society. And why are they out there? So, in terms of strategy, what do we do?
Thank you very much for the opportunity. In the first place, we are looking at the law. Since the law is not flexible enough to accommodate that, the first point is to restructure our law to incorporate that. Then the second one, after the law has been set in place, there should be structures to be able to accommodate the social work aspect of it, so that the supervisory will not be a challenge. One thing that I would suggest is that if someone is going into social service, we have some institutes and institutions in place, private or public. What readily comes to mind is Zoom Lion. If the person is to serve a non-custodial by cleaning, the person could be assigned to Zoom Lion so that in the morning he or she will report at the place where the work is assigned. The supervisory structure of that institution will take care of it and will record appropriately. Then we move on. So if it is another form of service, the structure should be in place to take care of it so that the supervision will be very smooth. Then also, when we come to education, education is key. There's a lot that is going on in the world, and the NCCE should be ready to educate us on this. Ministry of Interior is not free from the education. Then also the Attorney General's office is also not free from this. They should educate and inform us. Stakeholders can come on board, and they would also replicate the education. For instance, will I say, on statistics, we have 70% of the population being Christian. So if the community of the clergy is brought together and educated on this, they would also take it to their congregations to educate them. In the same way, our brothers, the Muslims, could also take it on and on and on, would cover everything. But before we educate, there should be a clear document on how we want it to be and how it should be. Then also the challenges that would come with it too should be documented so that we would all know and agree to it, so that we'll try to mitigate the challenges and see to smooth implementation. So for education, all of us are involved, including CDD. Thank you.
Yes, my brother from social welfare. If the phone is less than, you didn't add that part of my statement, less than 100 Ghana cedi or 200 Ghana cedi. For Christ's sake, we have been operating our criminal justice system on punitive aspects of the whole situation and not looking at reformative and retroactive, is it retrospective? No, retributive form of justice. When you say retributive, which was the olden days how our forefathers were practicing criminal justice before the British came in, if you check the history. But now we are looking at punitive. So everybody does something, let's kill him, let's put him in jail, let's do this. Meanwhile, we could put in structures where the person will reform and the victim will also forgive and be able to come back and get reformed or some level of help in society. That aspect is what we are not looking at. So crime is crime. We are not going to encourage a bill or a law that will encourage people to commit crime. But the point is that we are encouraging a law that will bring about reformation, rehabilitation, reintegration, and be able to give some kind of relief to victims. That is what we are looking at. So crime is crime. Whether one person or two person, you need to be dealt with. But we are looking at the ways in which one must be dealt with. So for social welfare, I like the answer you gave, that structural and capacity and resources, you are not resourced. I think this forum, we should send a message to government that lack of resources for social welfare is also impeding justice when it comes to women who have been arrested or children who have been left behind. It is their mandate to take care of that. In Kumasi, under Justice for All, we went there and a lady had given birth to a 6-month-old baby in prison. And we asked what social welfare were doing. That was when I was previewed that social welfare were supposed to liaise with the court, and there are structures there, but because they lack the resources, these things are not done. You cannot leave a Kwiapin Polo's daughter or a child in the hands of a lawyer. What about if she's a lady and the lawyer is a man, and then you go and they abuse? What will you say? So we don't do this, and it is not allowed in our criminal justice structure or jurisprudence, and it is. So please, because I don't have those facts, that's why I'm not speaking on authority with those facts, but I know as a fact that social welfare, you have some principles or linkage with the courts and those who have been sentenced to that effect. Even, Madam from AG, before you are sentenced, a woman, I don't know whether that clause is shall or must or may. You are supposed to test the woman to know whether she is pregnant. And we often don't do this, and we get pregnant women in Isawom. These are some of the lapses that we should bring to bear while we are trying to get non-custodial sentencing issues into the system. In terms of all the discussions, we have not touched more on the architecture of the bill, the content of the bill. And I think it's because we are all looking at the importance at this moment. If you look at the bill itself, the proposal government and stakeholders are making, if it goes through, is that some offenses can never be considered under non-custodial. So please be assured that it is not a bill to release criminals or allow criminals to have that pomposity to do whatever they want to do and kill more. This one, there are some kind of offenses, they are not part of it. It can't. Two, those offenses that are even part, the proposal is such that unless the judge is sentencing you to a minimum sentence, or the sentence is less than 6 years, others are saying we should bring it 3 years, 3 years, then you can qualify. So if it is not less than 3 years, you cannot even qualify under this. But most of the people who are fined like a Kwiapin Polo will definitely then qualify because it will not affect them in that breath. In terms of the AG, I think this forum should also send another signal to government. The AG's department, as my sister said, she is coming from the prosecution department. But the drafting unit is under, they are not much. If the word under resource is, you face a lot of challenges, and he rightly said, the bills get there, because they are not many, you don't get them to fast track the process. So a bill can lie there for a long time, because we had to exert pressure from the executive, and one of their directors even told me that, who is behind this bill, that there's too pressure on me, one of their directors, meaning they want to work, but the bills are many. And now, unless you put too much pressure, so the Attorney General's minister, who has just been appointed, should look at recruiting more people and resourcing the drafting unit so that bills of this sort, where they have collaboration from big think tanks and NGOs, can run through faster. And I believe the Interior Ministry and other ministries may have similar challenges to that effect. So let us use this platform to send another message to them to that effect. Okay. And the woman matter and the social welfare, I just wanted to give you an example that we'll be premiering a video very soon where you understand that a 67-year-old woman has been sentenced to 11 years imprisonment. And then after almost 5 years during the sentence, there was an appeal from her office, and she has been acquitted and discharged. Now the ordeal is about how the son was collecting scraps from the refuse dump to feed himself and was lost in the system. So if we are looking at social welfare, please, it is community service. Probation officers are in place, and it is the mandate of social welfare. Let us send a signal to them that as we are looking for a bill of this nature, a law of this nature, they should sit up, and government should resource them and restructure their system so that we can have meaning of the law. Because we keep saying that, are we ready? You ask the question, Madam, was Ghana ready for independence? This kind of mantra is always the kind of statement. I know you're moderating, I'm not attacking you. It's often statement from politicians in most cases. We are not ready. The systems are not there. When will the systems be ready? If Zimbabwe can be tagged as one of the best African countries handling community service, what about Ghana? And that is why we've taken time, together with stakeholders, consulted, and make sure that the system will run. And Reverend Apostle, when you were mentioning, you mentioned pastors in the content of the bill. It's because we didn't touch the bill, so please permit me, I'm mentioning some of the few things there. We have included the architecture in such a way that it starts from the top, goes down to the district where the magistrates and the judges down there are involved. We've involved chiefs and religious leaders. Why? Because we are looking at the reformation of the person. So within a community, there may be a pastor or a chief that criminal respects so much. And when they are seen there, they also contribute to the admonishment of these people so that they don't go back to commit that crime. So it is something that is being contextualized into our system, and at least it is better to give it a try than to wait and say that we want to put everything in place before we start the implementation of this one. I would want to just end, I don't know if I may have the opportunity to speak again, just to let you know that we are looking at prison decongestion, and as you all know, the Justice for All program have also helped reduce the prison congestion from 33% since its inception from 2007 to currently, as he said, I thought it was 12, but he said 11.8 thereabout. So that has been a drastic reduction for us. And for the first time, we are, the Chief Justice will spearhead this, and then the first virtual Justice for All court sitting will be held on Friday, 9:30 a.m., and it will be virtual. So in case journalists here want to also contribute to this, CDD should permit me just to put this out there so that you can all monitor from the Judicial Service website or Justice for All or POS social media handles or Facebook, so that we will be able to still cut the number to a single-digit percentage. If it helps, fine. We are not releasing criminals. But if you go to prison and somebody has been accused of an offense and the person has been there for 10 years, 20 years, 15 years, and he has not stand trial, you will speak like the way I'm speaking, because you see it, you feel it, and you try to be able to help fix the system. So thank CDD for this excellent work that they're doing to assist the criminal justice system to be better off, rather than sitting there and throwing their voices and criticisms outside there. I'm not saying criticisms are not good, but when you criticize constructively and you are part of the system to fix it, then we will be able to have sustainable development and results. Thank you.
Thank you, Kojo. So how many of us are with Kojo? Let's start, make the mistakes and learn. Are we all for it? I mean, let's go for it. Make all the mistakes. Even when there's a baby born, they crawl. I mean, they fall, but eventually they learn to walk. So we're for it, right? Great. And I'm sure ASP, you are towing that line. Let's hear you, ASP.
I think Jonathan has said so many things, and the only thing I want to include is we need the media to do a lot of advocacy and education for us. You know, the media goes far. We are putting in all these efforts. Civil society is helping and all that, but you need to also do a lot of advocacy so that the government will see the need for non-custodial sentences to be implemented. For me, if you ask me if we are ready, I would say we are ready. Somewhere in 1990, we went to ratify Tokyo rules. Yes. It's not just about signing international documents. You should ask yourself whether you can implement it. And we said we are ready. Even as a service, prison service, the nation has also ratified Mandela rules, and it's giving us a lot of pressure. Because of that, we are even coming out with a new Prison Service Act, incorporating the Mandela rules, standard minimum rules for treatment of prisoners. You see, so we were ready. That's why we went to sign those documents. So the media, please, you need to do a lot of advocacy work for us. I think society also has a role to play, society in general. We need to stop stigmatization. If somebody commits an offense, it's not like he's a devil. you know, look at all those tax you give that person. One way or the other, we are all criminals. Just that we've not been caught. Yes, the guys. Somehow you cornered some lady somewhere and had an affair with her. They say that we the men, we always rape the ladies. Because if you take her to the room and then you are trying to touch her, you say stop, but you manage to do it. Is it not rape? You have raped her. And she has not reported you, so you think, oh, I'm free. Most of the cases we receive, rape cases, deferment. It's very interesting. You see, the law is very interesting. The law says that on rape, consent is a key factor. So when you are doing the act and the lady says stop, even when you have reached latitude, what, and she says stop, you have to stop. So we have some of the inmates, it's so funny. You ask the person, he said, oh, the lady agreed. And then we went, and we were doing that thing, she said, and then she said I should stop, and I didn't stop. And now they find themselves there.
Thank you, SP. I will stop you here.
Yes. So we are ready.
Okay, so you want to make a point? Okay, let me tell you, we have 4 minutes more. 1 minute for you, 1 minute for Mrs. Ajiman, and then give to Kwe as well. 1 minute. 1 minute. Or else he will arrest you. That's exactly what I want to say. In fact.
So I just wanted to, our brother from the social welfare said something about releasing criminals. I think there hasn't been any dispute about the kind of offenses we are looking at. If you look at our laws, we have various classes of offenses. We have misdemeanors, we have second-degree felonies, we have first-degree felonies, we have capital offenses. When we talk about the non-custodial sentencing, we are all looking at the misdemeanors. And we are all looking at first offenders too. So these are the things that we are actually trying to consider when it comes to all this issue. The other thing I want to bring to mind is that we seem to talk about Ekuapim's polo issue as what gave us a wake-up call, but we've forgotten that we are just recovering from a pandemic. Imagine if the pandemic had hit us very hard, what would have been the situation in our prisons? Let's have that in mind. Thank you very much.
So thank you for the opportunity, and I think we've discussed a lot. And as I started saying that we are doing something. It isn't that government is sitting idle. We've all said it, that there's financial challenges, the feeding, medical bills of prisoners and all that. We all know there's financial constraints with government. And so government has this non-custodial sentencing options as one of its priority. But as we said, I made mention that we have a number of them in the laws. Our Criminal Offences Act is there. And then you said that we don't have allies. And so it's there, but the implementation is a problem. So it is not just passing the bills that we need to do. But when we are passing the bills, we should ensure that the bills are implementable. That's what I keep saying. So we have to dot all the I's and the T's, put the structures in place, and make sure that these things, whilst it is coming, there's a regulation to it, that immediately it's passed, we will have it. Because I think the Criminal Offences Act, since 1960 plus, it's been there, because they are not allies. So as we're going forward and we are passing bills, the bills should be implementable. Thank you.
Well, my concluding remarks, I am looking forward to the community service bill. I think that it will address a lot of these issues. I'm also looking forward to many more options in sentencing. Until then, there isn't much to, in the process it may change, and so there isn't much to say until it has been passed. We've made all our input, and we are waiting for the bill.
Mrs. Ameli, any other contribution from our contributors, the media? Moses, do you have anything to say? All right then. But I would also want to find out from one of the people who've made this possible, or today, enabled us to have this engagement is the Director of Advocacy and Policy Engagement, Dr. Kojo Pumpuni Asante with the CDD. Would you want to?
Because of the people that are involved. I have been intimately involved in this from the early 2000s. And I was just telling somebody that I remember there was a committee that was chaired by the late Justice V.C. R.C. Krapp that had a Supreme Court Judge, Justice Modibo Okran, on the. It was a co-chair between the AG at the time and the Interior Minister. And literally we were tasked to work on trying to just identify people on remand that need to be, basically we have to review their cases so that we can address the congestion issue. And this is the work that over the years, Jonathan has, and his young people, they are really young people who have, I mean, I admire them a lot for their dedication, for what they have done over the years. Their passion is what has saved so many people in prisons. Because those times we used to travel with Shraj, we used to travel with the Judicial Committee of Parliament, going to prisons in across the country, and you would not believe the kind of conditions that people have to live in. And one of the things that was is still in my brain up to today is all the lesions that you see on the skin of people because of the heat. And if you come out of prison, that is a mark that never leaves you. Even if you get rehabilitated, it always reminds you of the encounter, and you are angry with society. Because some of them, is even by accident. So I think that sometimes because you are in somewhere away from people, we forget that they even exist. We should remember that 60% of the population is under 35 in this country. I don't know, the prison service used to publish an annual thing in terms of and give statistics on the ages and so on. But we should then look at in the next 10 years and say that the most of the people who will be going to jail will probably be between 18 and 35. So that is our workforce, our productive workforce that we will be, and they have the energy. And if they keep going in and out, then we should remember that we're going to have a very difficult society to deal with. So I think it's imperative. What we're hoping to do is that from this stakeholder engagement, we can do a letter to the Minister of Justice and Attorney General so that we continue from where Jonathan said we ended, which is 2020, and really expedite action as quickly as possible for the next steps to happen. So thank you very much, everybody, for coming.
Thank you very much, Dr. Asante. I would also want to say a very big thank you to Mrs. Ameli Dankwa-Ajiman, the Office of Attorney General, Gifty Kwe, Assistant Director, Ministry of Interior, ASP Stephen Okai-Abuaji, Legal Units, Ghana Prison Service, Jonathan Osei-Owusu, Executive Director, Pios Foundation and Facilitator of the Justice for All Program, Apostle Lawrence Otunyakun, Finance and Administration Director, Church of Pentecost. And then also, finally, to Superintendent Elombani from the Legal and Prosecution Department of the Ghana Police Service. We're so grateful for your time, your contributions, and we know that there will definitely be a change. We're hopeful. My name is Wendy Lai. Thank you so much for your time. But before we leave, I will call Regina Manfo-Tete, Team Lead, Human Rights, Social Inclusion, Social Justice, and Legislative Engagement to give us some closing remarks.
I think I have to thank all of you
for this rich and insightful discussion. This has actually reinforced the fact that non-custodial sentencing for petty offenses is urgently needed in our country. The discussion has been so good. And as Dr. Asante rightly put it, right after this, we are not going to rest. We will take it further, engage the Minister for Justice and Attorney General, and then we see how best it will go. The purpose of sentencing, giving custodial sentencing, is not being achieved. And I think the discussion has revealed it to all of us. So we need to have a change so that we can have non-custodial sentencing for petty offenses. And I stress on the petty offenses, my dear brother from Ministry of Gender, please, for petty offenses. So I thank you all, our panelists. Wendy, thank you for the wonderful moderation. And all our participants and media, we are so grateful that you managed to come and join us to have this important discussion. Thank you very much.